Alcatraz, the 1940s. Alcatraz was a federal prison during the first half of the 20th century. It housed the nation's worst criminals on a desolate island just miles from San Francisco. One Alcatraz Christmas in the 1940s saw Warden James Johnston hold a party for his staff. The cozy affair was joyous until a figure with long sideburns, who was dressed in gray, appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. The temperature subtly dropped, despite the fire's persistence. For a full minute, no one knew who the man was or how he entered the room. Guards approached the man when the fire went out. The room plunged into darkness. When the lights were turned on, the man in gray was gone. California, 1892. Kate Morgan, a young 20-something, checked into the Hotel del Coronado on Thanksgiving Day. According to staff, she awaited the arrival of a gentleman. 5 days later, she shot herself to death. Decades later, guests and staff report paranormal activity on the floor where she stayed and died. Flickering lights, TVs and radios turning on and off, room doors opening and closing when they should be locked. Even visual sightings of the deceased are just a taste of what's going on at the resort. The hotel's gift shop seems to be a hotbed of activity with merchandise mysteriously flying off the shelves. And no, it's not a Black Friday sale. Tokyo. Tarano Masakado was a samurai who was killed in 940 AD after declaring himself emperor after a series of deadly power plays. In the 19th century, his gravesite became the grounds of the country's financial ministry, which was destroyed during a 1923 earthquake. The ministry was rebuilt, but plagued with construction accidents and deaths, including that of the financial minister. In 1940, a lightning strike destroyed several nearby offices. Eventually, a bank set up business next to Masakado's grave. In order to appease the seemingly angry spirit, they opened an account in his name. Bank employees were also instructed not to open any windows or to turn their backs on the grave. Indiana, 1967. Jake Nolan was getting off late from his construction job. Tired and hungry, he just wanted to be home. On his way, he saw a man his age walking toward him. He clearly saw it was someone he went to school with. Frankie Jacobs was the man's name. Nolan quickly crossed the street because he didn't want to talk to anyone, even someone he hadn't seen in years. He just wanted to be home. Jacobs didn't notice him, and both went their separate ways. The next morning, Nolan was having breakfast with his mother when he mentioned seeing Jacobs. His mother went pale. She had kept relations with Jacob's mother and was on the phone with her the previous day. See, Jacob's mother called to say that her son had died, killed in an ambush in Vietnam. Louisiana. Muriel's in New Orleans is a popular spot where every night sees every table taken. All except one. The table is set daily with bread and wine for the previous owner, Pierre Jordan. In 1814, Jordan lost his home, the current restaurant, in a poker game. Unable to stand this loss, Jordan committed suicide on the second floor. Since his death, knocking can be heard on the walls, and glasses have mysteriously flown off tables. Perhaps his permanent table will eventually appease his spirit. Texas. Some have called the Catfish Plantation in Waxahachie, Texas, the most haunted restaurant in the state. Apparently, the spirit of a former resident named Caroline likes to brew coffee and stack teacups. However, no one but the owners have keys to the property. New York, 2001. Tammy Jones, a nurse at a nursing home, was stuck working the night shift due to a staff shortage. Most of the residents were in various stages of dementia. The work was physically and mentally demanding. This particular night was oddly quiet, until a call light came on from an empty room. Jones thought a wandering patient did it. She was correct. To her surprise, the elderly man was naked. He stood facing the far corner of the room, banging his head against the wall. Jones was familiar with this resident. She knew he was bedridden due to a broken back. She called his name. He slowly turned and disappeared. Jones ran to his room down the hall. There she found the man in bed, eyes closed. He had just passed away in his sleep. Ancient Greece. Ghost stories are not a recent invention. In ancient Rome, Roman senator Pliny the Younger held fast to this one until he died in 113 AD. A large estate in Athens was abandoned, and rightfully so. In the dead of night, one could hear a noise come from the house. A noise which, if you dared to listen closely, sounded like the rattling of chains. And if you dared to listen closely and heard these chains, then you might see the form of an old man. Skinny, almost malnourished, and completely disheveled with dirt and grime. With chains, those ghostly chains, around his wrists and ankles. No one knows if Pliny experienced this specter firsthand, or if he made up the tale. A philosopher named Athenodorus was enthralled by this story, so he rented the house, hoping to confront the ghost. To the philosopher's shock and awe, the ghost appeared the first night, rattling his chains before vanishing. Athenodorus noted the spot where the ghost vanished. The next day, he hired workers to dig up that spot. There, beneath the house, was the skeleton of a man wrapped in chains. The corpse was given a proper burial, and the ghost never appeared again. Another chilling ghost story from ancient Greece comes from the writer Plutarch. In Coronado, Greece, a boy named Damon was the object of affection for a Roman military commander. Damon rejected the commander time after time. The commander's love turned to rage. Damon realized the commander's rage could, and probably would, turn deadly. Damon gathered a group of friends and set out to kill the Roman commander. Their plan worked. The commander, along with several other Roman soldiers, died in an ambush. The city council condemned Damon and his friends to death. Before he could be executed, Damon had each council member killed. Damon and his friends fled to the countryside and plundered it, becoming some of the worst criminals ancient Greece saw. Time passed. The townspeople allowed Damon to return to his home. The details are murky, but he was killed shortly afterward in the local bathhouse. Then, certain phantoms appeared in that place. Groans were heard. The bathhouse was shuttered, but the sights and sounds of dead men continue to this very day. California. Jean Harlow was a Hollywood actress and sex symbol throughout the 1930s. She lived in Beverly Hills with her abusive husband, Paul Byrne. In 1932, Byrne shot himself in the head while standing in front of a mirror. Their butler discovered him and called the movie studio which had Harlow under contract. Yes, he called the movie studio instead of the police. Thus began the rumors that the death was not a suicide. Many suspected Byrne's ex-girlfriend killed the man. The woman jumped off a boat to her death a couple days after. Harlow soon moved out after Byrne's death, but died a few years later at the age of 26. In 1963, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring bought the home. He lived there with his girlfriend Sharon Tate until Tate left him for Roman Polanski. One night, Tate was alone in the house, sleeping in the master bedroom. She woke up, feeling the presence of someone standing near her. She saw a creepy little man. Without a second's hesitation, she ran out of the room and into another horrifying scene. She saw a hanging corpse in the hallway, its throat slit and flowing blood. It was believed that the ghost was of Paul Byrne. An interesting postscript. Jay Sebring and Sharon Tate remained friends until both of them were murdered by the Charles Manson cult. Sharon Tate was the same age as Jean Harlow when she passed. Missouri. The house is called Hobo Hill. It's named for the sheer volume of homeless people who have historically occupied the land. A family bought the home in 2017. A few months after moving in, they witnessed odd sounds and even odder images. The husband and father heard the same sound in the attic every night at 11:15. It sounded like the dropping of a heavy box, followed by a dragging sound, as if someone was moving it across the attic floor. He also experienced the sensation of someone jumping on his neck every time he was in the basement. The 7-year-old daughter began sleepwalking, something she had never done before or since once the family fled the house. Sleepwalking was not the only weird thing she did. She began to speak in tongues while shuffling around with her head tilted to one side. The family dog refused to go near the stairs. The stairs. That was where the family kept seeing a man wearing a suit and a top hat. A man who would always vanish into thin air. Desperate, the family contacted a priest and paranormal investigators to help them cleanse their home. According to one investigator, hundreds of spirits lived in the basement. Could they have been the homeless people who had once squatted on the land? After 7 months, the family moved out. The wife's mother became caretaker to the property. She claims to have heard footsteps in the attic. Heavy footsteps. She was also knocked off a stepladder while painting. Arizona. The Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona has a laundry list of haunted happenings. Some guests report seeing a little boy wandering the halls, a child's voice murmuring as if he's walking right behind you, and sometimes the ghost physically touches people. Sleepy guests claim to have had cold hands touch them in bed. Some have even woken up unable to breathe, as if those cold hands were clasped over their mouths and throats. TV channels have changed at random on their own. Light bulbs have mysteriously unscrewed themselves. And the worst report? The sounds of infants screaming in the hotel's basement. Washington, 2011. A barista for a popular coffee shop chain was closing up one night. Her two co-workers were in the back room cleaning. In the lobby by herself, the barista clearly heard a man ask, "Where are my hands?" The barista checked every corner of the store and found there were no customers inside. She then told her co-workers, who let her in on all the haunted happenings. They told her that they would hear something hit the ground, and upon searching, not find anything. They'd also hear the chime of their front door opening when the door would remain shut. The activity continues to this day. Ancient China. Tupo was a minister to Chinese Emperor Suhan. A rumor began stating that a woman would jeopardize the town of Jiangshan. The emperor ordered a mass execution of all women. Tupo disagreed with the emperor's order. Not wanting any dissent, the emperor had Tupo killed. The emperor was then warned that the minister would return from the grave to haunt him. 3 years later, the emperor fell ill and died. One of his final dreams was of Tupo killing him with an arrow. Colorado, 2005. Barley Colorado is a nature lover's dream. Buffalo, elk, and wolves roam around the majestic prairie. Boaters and fishermen enjoy the sparkling springs. However nice the amenities, the Thomases were moving out of their Bar Lake home. It was simply time to move on. They were glad they did, after one family member suffered a violent encounter with the unknown. Ann Thomas had been going back to the house to clean before ownership changed hands. One morning, the woman was alone in the downstairs bathroom mopping. As she leaned into the bathroom from the hallway, something hit her hard on the back. It felt like someone punched her. However, no one was there. Anne thought something fell on her. No, everything in the house had already been moved. Anne's back remained red for several days after the assault. To this day, the woman has no idea who hit her or why.